The free agent market for positions of need continues to get deeper and deeper for the Philadelphia Eagles, who might be in for a big week next week.
You are Locked On Eagles, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in, Eagles fans. I'm Louis DiBiase, co-host of the Locked On Eagles podcast. You can also find my work over at Bleacher Report. He's Gino Camilleri, our scouting director, Eagles content at Bleacher Report, and my co-host on today's edition of Locked On Eagles. The safety market got even deeper on Thursday. The free agent class for positions of need for the Birds. There's little excuses. It is deep heading into free agency next week. Could they also be targeting potentially a top-name running back free agent? Also, how do they replace Avonte Maddox in the slot after his release on Wednesday? All that and more coming your way. We thank you so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use our code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. So, I mean, Gino, we've been talking a lot about safety the last few weeks because it feels like every single day somebody gets released. It's Jamal Adams and Quandre Diggs. Then it's, Jordan Poyer. And then today, one that I was kind of surprised by, we've mentioned him as a trade candidate for the Eagles, but the Denver Broncos released Justin Simmons, who is now an unrestricted free agent heading into next week. I mean, there is no excuse for the Eagles to not have a quality high-end starter at this position heading into next week when the class is what? I mean, at this point, a month ago we were saying it's the deepest class in free agency among pretty much every position, and now it's like it feels like it's 20-plus deep.
I'm just going to go down the list. McKinney.
Yeah.
Rayshon Jenkins, I believe, signed back with the Jaguars today. Kyle Duggar has the transition tag. You could still trade for him. Antoine Winfield still has the franchise tag. You could trade for him. Quandre Diggs, Jordan Whitehead, Jordan Fuller, Cameron Curl, Jordan Poyer got released. Tashawn Gibson is out there. Justin Simmons, Julian Blackmon, Deshaun Elliott, Geno Stone, Alohi Gilman. The list goes on and
Darnell
on
Savage.
and on and on. There are so many guys.
Chauncey Gardner-Johnson.
It would be negligence to a point on Howie Roseman's behalf not to bring in somebody that could help elevate that position.
It'd be a crime.
It would quite literally be a crime. One, because you need bodies there regardless. You only have two guys that are guaranteed to play for you next year in important roles. One of them being Sidney Brown, just got his knee operated on towards the end of the season. You don't know when he is going to be back. And as good as Reed Blankenship has been, there are injury concerns with him at times. He hasn't played a full season yet, and he was an undrafted free agent. They need to bring in more talent regardless, as good as those two guys are. No disrespect to them. It's just a new league where you need 4 to 5 guys that can play this position. Look at the Ravens. Why is Geno Stone a free agent right now? Because they have so many guys that they have to pay. Because
Marcus Williams, Kyle Hamilton.
It's such an important position for them. And the good teams around the NFL understand that. But right now, supply and demand, Lou, simply because of how many guys there are and the demand for the position, teams aren't going out there and just shoveling bags of money at the safety
I was going to say, man.
It's one of the things you find at the back of the store and you're like, oh, I didn't even know this section existed here at Walmart, right? Like they'll stumble upon it later. These guys aren't going to get the $20, $25 million deal.
There's too many players. That's the thing is we've talked about wanting to get a top tier safety, Gino, and it almost feels like now they can have their cake and eat it too, where they can get a top talent and they're not going to have to break the bank. Even at this point, and Xavier McKinney is probably the number one free agent that will set the market. But
I believe so.
And he's 24 and his numbers look incredible, so he's going to get a bag, but how much leverage does he have when teams have so many options? Like, I feel like the Eagles, no matter what, unless they go just, bare minimum, they really try to skimp and just, they go for like an Eddie Jackson or Deshaun Elliott type and just get a Vic Fangio guy and just give up. Unless they do that, I'm going to be coming away from next week saying whatever safety they got, it might look like a steal.
I don't think Eddie Jackson's as bad of an idea as you.
I absolutely hate it considering the other options. Yeah.
Considering the other options.
He's okay now, but people, I think, see that he was an all-pro in 2018, 5 years ago with Vic Fangio.
No, there are plenty of other options out there. And the thing is, you're going to be able to not just go and sign a safety for the sake of signing a safety. You're going to be able to sign maybe multiple guys to fill multiple roles for you, because what is going to be asked of these guys? Well, look at Justin Evans for a little bit last year. They wanted to throw him into the equation, even with Sidney Brown there, and try and move these guys around the formation and play all over. Well, you can go out there and let's say you break the bank for Xavier McKinney. Let's say there's somebody else that towards the end of free agency, you're saying, how is Darnell Savage still sitting out there, right?
Right.
Like maybe
or one of the older guys, like how is Jordan Poyer still available?
Exactly.
Or Micah Hyde, like one of the Buffalo Bills guys. Like maybe, again, I'm somebody that wants the prime young player. And it was great to see today that James Palmer from NFL Network, Albert Breer, they both talked about the Eagles. They really want to add younger players in their prime on the defense, especially in the secondary. So that's encouraging to hear. So that should be the focus. But I will say, if you add one of those players, as you're mentioning, you could also add an older veteran while Sidney Brown is injured to be part of that 4+ man rotation. So, yeah, again, I want to go with a younger player, and you have those options. But, Gino, I think when you look at, again, I don't love some of the other Fangio guys that are available, but Justin Simmons specifically, who was released today, like, yes, he's going to be 31 by the time the season starts. He's one of the Fangio guys, though, that I'm pretty in on. He's still a really good player, has led the league in interceptions since 2016, still had 3 of them last year, 6 just 2 years ago. Justin Simmons is one of the older guys on this market that I think I would be more excited about than the alternatives.
I think it goes step one. We are going to attack the 25 to 27-year-old age range first. That's what we have to identify. Can we find a guy that we could bring in to potentially be a full-time starter for us for at least 3 years? That seems
so you don't have to keep doing this every year, Gino, because Justin Simmons will be great for you this year, but you're going to have to find a new Justin Simmons in a year or two.
Well, with that approach, you can still bring him in and say that, because he's not going to be here forever. And he could be a guy for you that even if you don't sign one of these younger guys, you just sign Justin Simmons. Let's say you go into the draft and maybe you walk away with the best safety in the class, and like Tyler Nubin, for example. Maybe he's that guy that can help train these 3 young guys, and Reed Blankenship, Sidney Brown, and now whoever that fourth guy is in the rotation, maybe he can be that guy to uplift this whole scheme. And at the same time, maybe he's just like, I want to come back and play for Fangio. I'm willing to do it for a lesser number, or somebody's going to overpay him, and I don't want to be part of that discussion. That's where it has to be limited to. You don't overpay those 31 to 34-year-old guys. Those are the second, third, and fourth options. You want to go young first to start things off. But the idea of adding somebody from a Fangio defense, out of all the guys, the Brandon Joneses of the world, Justin Simmons is he's a high-level ball player. He just fell victim to what happened with Russell Wilson and that whole $85 million dead cap hit that's going on in Denver right now. So he's on the market with all of these other guys, the Marcus Mays that have gotten released by the New Orleans Saints. Both of the guys in Buffalo, man. I couldn't believe what happened to Buffalo yesterday. And hats off to Howie Roseman for keeping his team together for so long, Lou, where you see other competitors like the Bills having to go and chop some dead weight and some good ball players. The Eagles are finding ways to add even better ball players to what they already have.
Yeah, and they have the flexibility, and I think Simmons is the right combination of, yes, he's a Fangio guy, but he also has the talent that I would take him over a lot of alternatives, whereas the other players with Fangio that he's had, I just think there are too many other better options when it comes to just pure talent. I don't want to, make sure we're taking a guy just because he played in the scheme before over a superior player.
No, 100%.
But Simmons does fit that mold. I will say, though, he's probably going to have a decent-sized market, even with how many good safeties there are out there, that he might still price himself out for what I'm willing to give. I feel like unless you can get him on a team-friendly deal, I'd rather just throw my money at a Cam Curl or a Geno Stone or a Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. But regardless of who they get, Gino, I'm very confident next week that we're going to come away saying they look a lot better at safety than they did a week ago.
It would be a real shame, and especially with the amount of money that Howie Roseman has to play with, you're thinking that anywhere from an $8 to $10 million deal, heck, even up to $12 million on the higher end of some of these guys, has to be within play, because you don't have a lot invested at the safety position in terms of assets and money. You have nobody to pay at linebacker. You have a young group at corner. you're not going to pay anybody in a corner group, which I believe Trey White, who might be the most coveted guy, is probably going to get overpaid.
You have a young defensive line
safety,
too that's not on big deals either, Gino. So
yep, where it's safety, it's like we can just go and pay a really good ball player to play a really big role for us. And at the same time, we might be able to get a pseudo linebacker and a pseudo coverage guy at the same time.
For sure. The secondary continues to be a topic for the Birds as they released cornerback from the slot Avonte Maddox yesterday, which surprised some, maybe not to others. Who's going to be the slot corner in 2024 now? We'll get into that coming up next right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast. Today's episode of the Locked On Eagles podcast is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions do apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers.
This episode of LOE is also brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. You shouldn't have to worry when you buy tickets to your next big event. Game Time is fast and easy. And when you go and buy tickets, I'm sure you're pulling up, the seating chart to this venue. I want to make sure I don't have an obstructed view. No, Game Time, you don't even have to click into the ticket. It will show you exactly the view that you are going to get. I used it when I went and saw Oregon a couple months ago. I use it all the time when I go and see the Avs play here in Colorado. They got last-minute tickets, zone deals, flash deals, anything you can imagine, not even just sports. You can go and see comedy shows. If you love the theater like my wife does, you can go see that as well. So today, to get in on the action, download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDON. That's LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed.
We thank you so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Guys, want to let you know that Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today, now available on the free Fire TV channels app. So a big move yesterday that came from the Philadelphia Eagles around the later afternoon. Avonte Maddox has been released as a pre-June 1st cut, so it saves the Eagles a little under $2 million on the salary cap. And Gino, even though Maddox has not stayed healthy any year, he's been in the league since 2018, I'm still shocked that they just straight up released him, not even as a post-June 1st second designation. I was kind of hoping for a restructure because he's really good when he plays, but I guess it shouldn't be totally shocking considering, again, he has not been available on the field enough to warrant that kind of cap hit of, almost $10 million.
I'm not 1,000% sure, and I don't think anybody is 1,000% sure if this is pre or post.
So the reports I've all seen are pre-June, but yeah, it's not been officially designated, I don't believe.
So the difference would be that if he was a pre-June 1st designated cut, the team would accumulate $7.7 million in dead cap while saving $2 million. The thing with the pre-June 1st designation is that you are able to spread that dead money over 2 years. So you would get about $3 point whatever million per the 2 years with the dead cap. If you were to do a post-June 1st, then you would only acquire around $2.5 million of dead cap and save $7 million. So to me, I can't see a world where
right?
And I would believe it has to come out today when the whole transaction list comes out around the National Football League. I would assume Howie Roseman's no dummy. I think that only would make sense. And the talks are that they would be willing to bring him back on a lower salary. For one, I might be an outlier, but I think I'm ready to move on from Avonte Maddox, man. Like, even when he came back last year, he just didn't look like the same player.
Yeah. I don't know if he was fully healthy when he came back, to be honest. What's your alternative plan then in the slot,
But
though?
is he ever fully healthy, though? I'm not going to rely on this guy to
not.
play 5 games a year. I'm not going to do it. I hate moving around all these guys. If it was on the offensive line and a guy played 5 games a year, I would have the same conversation. Give me the guy that can play 16 to 17 games at that position. It's such an important role, especially in today's National Football League, to the point where they were okay enough with letting Chauncey walk in 2022 or 2023 rather, because they were confident in Avonte and Zach. Well, plan A and B both went down the window. Then C, D, and E stunk out loud. It's time to just stop waiting for that corner position to come to you, especially at the slot in today's day and age. You have to go and address this position. I think this draft is a perfect draft to go and do that.
It's a good slot class for sure.
It is a really deep slot class.
But are we relying on a 5th-round rookie to start in the slot this year?
I don't think
Isaiah
he's going to be the
Rodgers?
starter. I think Isaiah Rodgers will be given the first option. I think
the thing is he's never even played in the slot before. Like I totally get what you're saying.
175 pounds.
No, I get that. He's definitely more built towards a slot. I get your logic. I totally do. I'm not saying to only have Avonte Maddox be your plan A and there's like Eli Ricks as your backup.
It can't be what it was last.
No, I'm not saying that for sure. I just don't, unless you're going to go out there and pay Kenny Moore. And maybe you do that. Kenny Moore right now is the most talented corner in free agency, regardless of if he's playing inside or outside. Maybe you say, we're going to go cheaper on the boundary by drafting a 1st or 2nd round pick with Keely Ringo as well. We can afford to maybe go more expensive in the slot and bring in more. Unless you do that, I'm with you. Like, have a plan B in Isaiah Rodgers or a rookie and have the other one be plan C. But if I could get Avonte Maddox back on a cheap contract, I'm okay with him still being in the room because, again, when he does play, like in 2022, again, he got hurt in 2022 as well, but he was an elite slot corner. So I would like to have that guy in the building, considering the alternatives are going to be young and experienced players. But I'm with you that you can't make that your number one focus in the slot because it hasn't been available or reliable for 6 years now.
Well, I mean, we're talking about safety. Maybe you don't even have to sign a true corner, a true slot corner. Maybe your idea is Darnell Savage and company. Sure. Like, you mix him in there with Eli Ricks and Zach McPherson and Isaiah Rodgers.
Or maybe Chauncey, if you bring him back, he's that guy.
Yeah. I hate having to rotate so many guys in the secondary.
That's a fair point.
And it always seems to come at the hands of one guy, and no fault to his own. He just continues to be off the field, the best availability. The best reliability is availability, and being on the field at that position. If that was like, if we're playing it into CFL and this guy is a field corner where you can just bury him and he doesn't get targeted a lot of the time, slot corners are so important because you're matching up against tight ends at time. You're matching up against very good route running wide receivers that could be very tall or very little. And Avonte Maddox, he's been good at times, but when he came back last year, if Buffalo is going to release Trey White because of what he looked like last year coming back from that injury, I think the Eagles have all the right in the world to release Avonte Maddox because I don't think he played up to the caliber that he played in years past. And you got to be on the football field, man. It sucks, but $10 million to keep this guy on the field for 4 games. Sure. No way.
You weren't keeping him on that contract. No, I'm just not as door closed on bringing him back at all because, again, maybe you're right,
like
and you bring in
like $1.5 million, maybe.
Yeah, then I'd be okay with it. The issue is Avonte Maddox is not Trey White. Trey White's played 10 games in 2 years and has had multiple torn Achilles. Maddox can still play. Yes, he wasn't great last year, but I don't think he was at 100%. He was really good 2 years ago, so he'll have a better market than the Eagles will be willing to pay. So I think they're going to have to move on regardless. Isaiah Rodgers will probably get the first crack, like you said. He hasn't been a slot corner, but he's built like one. Mm-hmm. It's a good class as well. You want to put more emphasis on safety. I think it probably predicting what will happen, it'll probably go more towards what you're saying, where Avonte Maddox is not in the plans in 2024. I do, though, Gino, hope. Again, I saw a lot of reports that it was pre-June 1st. I hope it's post-June because the way you laid out the numbers, it wouldn't make any sense to design it that way.
The only way it would make sense is that you were able to cut down that dead number.
But wouldn't you not need as much dead cap if it was a post-June 1st cut?
Yeah, you would have to realistically say, is my pre-June 1st savings less than my post-June 1st savings?
Right.
And the way you would do that is divide that number by 2. And if that number is more than what you are doing post-June 1st, you take the post-June 1st designation. Why would you take $3.5 million this year instead of $2.5 million? Well, you could save $1 million and only save $2 million this way. It doesn't make much sense.
Yeah.
Hopefully we find out within the next couple hours or so when the official transaction report comes out. But Avonte Maddox, that might have been his last game in Philadelphia. And if so, I know I was a little bit hard on him saying that I wouldn't want him to come back. He played some unbelievable games for this Eagles team, and he was a warrior at times battling through injury. He was hurt every single time he went out there. And for being a guy who was only 5'9", he tackled for like the game was on the line every single time. And if that was the last we saw of him, Dallas Goedert's going to be pretty upset that his best friend just left Philadelphia.
That's for sure. I saw a couple reports today about the Eagles being tied with a top-tier running back free agent. Would the Eagles consider going against everything they stand for? Some people are starting to think they might. We'll get into it coming up next right here on Locked On Eagles. Today's episode of the Locked On Eagles podcast is brought to you by Robinhood. Did you know that even if you have a 401k for retirement, you can still have an IRA? Robinhood has the only IRA that gives you a 3% boost on every dollar you contribute when you subscribe to Robinhood Gold. But get this, now through April 30th, Robinhood is even boosting every single dollar you transfer in from other retirement accounts with a 3% match. That's right, no cap on a 3% match. Robinhood Gold gets you the most for your retirement thanks to your IRA with a 3% match. This offer is good through April 30th. Get started at robinhood.com/boost. Subscription fees do apply. And now for some legal information. Claim as of Q1 2024, validated by Radius Global Market Research. Investing involves risk, including loss. Limitations apply to IRAs and 401ks. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold for 1 year from the date of first 3% match. Must keep Robinhood IRA for 5 years. The 3% matching on transfers is subject to terms and conditions. Robinhood IRA available to U.S. customers in good standing. Robinhood Financial LLC, member SIPC, is a registered broker-dealer. All right, Eagles fans, let's talk a little bit of running back here. And again, these are not like reports from Ian Rappaport or Adam Schefter that are saying the Eagles will target a top-tier running back free agent. But there was a reporter in Philadelphia as well as New York that both said there may be some mutual interest between the Philadelphia Eagles and Saquan Barkley. And Gino, we've touched on this a little bit. We actually got into this a little bit last week when we talked about how Howie Roseman can zig when the rest of the league is zagging. And it goes against everything that they have done. It goes against pretty much everything we believe in roster building and what they've practiced and what we've preached. But I do keep thinking about Howie trying to tap into market inefficiencies. And look, Saquon Barkley is the guy that they're tagging to the Eagles. I think he's way too expensive compared to other running backs and the production difference, but he is an elite talent that compared to other elite talents at other positions is not going to make nearly as much. So maybe you try to stay ahead of the curve in that way. I don't think it's going to happen, but it is something to keep an eye out for because Roseman's always trying to switch it up.
I'm trying to hypothesize a way that you could put this on paper and blind resume this thing to the entire room as Howie Roseman. You say,
right,
all right, we have to make up X amount of receptions, X amount of yards on the ground, X amount of touchdowns. We could get X player for this amount. We could get X player for this amount. And this is the production like that's seen out of Moneyball. Maybe, just maybe, you blind resume convince the rest of the room that player X, which turns out to be Saquon Barkley,
like regardless of position,
could legitimately be your third best option in your offense outside of A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, and could potentially be your number one running back that you have to replace. And Dallas Goedert, you don't know the future of him in Philadelphia. Maybe this is your true third pass catching option. And at the same time, you could still go invest in the draft and add more weapons. And maybe that market inefficiency with Derrick Henry out there and all these big name guys prices the market down a little bit.
Right.
I don't think Saquon Barkley, the biggest talent of them all, is going to get priced down. Maybe he just wants to win football games and run behind a really good offensive line, which he hasn't been able to do.
And he plays in an offense with Kellen Moore, who can utilize a receiving running back very well. Yeah, I mean, and Gino, you mentioned it last week when we were talking about how the Eagles zig when the rest of the league zags, and you said maybe you just pour all of your money into the offense and you just try to outscore everybody. I mean, yes, like, again, when you talk about running back, is it smart to give a running back $10+ million a year on a 3-year contract, even if it's a Saquon Barkley, instead of paying a Gus Edwards or, again, a DeAndre Swift, a cheaper contract? No, because, again, the production, there's not a substantial enough difference to make it worth that money. However, again, when you look at it, when you compare running back to other positions, and you say, we can get Saquon Barkley for Michael Gallup money, potentially, if this market is the way that some expect it to be, in that perspective, it would make some sense, because Saquon Barkley, again, like you said, when you do the blind Moneyball like test, just as an overall talent, is an elite offensive talent. And if you add him with A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert, and Jalen Hurts, it's like, who's stopping that? That's a matchup nightmare.
That would be a really good zig when the rest of the league zags.
And I don't want to do the big money, Gino. I'm just saying this is in the scenario where the market is just nobody's getting a contract, not even a Derrick Henry.
Or an Austin Eckler, for example.
Just none of them are.
There's just so many guys, and with the way that the league is
Tony Pollard.
I mean, heck, even Diana Rossini from The Athletic today pointed out that the league is just going to continue with the same approach at linebacker, running back, and safety. That you're going to see a lot of 1-year deals, a lot of guys getting under. Maybe it's not even a 3-year deal, Lou. Maybe we're talking a 1-year, $10 million deal.
I would do that. Sign me up. They've got the money to do it.
Do you think you're making a run next year? You gotta believe that. And
again, Gino, Michael Gallup makes 11.5 a year.
Yes, we're talking. This is the Dellavedova conversation that we've always had.
Like, again, yes, $10 million of Saquon versus $3 million of Devin Singletary. Of course, a smarter decision is Devin Singletary. But again, Saquon Barkley for $10 million, when you remove position, is an absolute steal for 1 year. I'm not saying to do, $11 million for 3 years, or do that with like a Josh Jacobs. But for 1 year, I'm not gonna be saying go for it, but I'm not gonna say don't do it either.
Too, it's like and Joe Mixon could potentially be on the market. It's like realistically, how big is the biggest contract? Like, nobody's getting McCaffrey money. It's not even going to be close.
There's only 3 running backs right now that make over 12 annually,
and a lot of them are getting. I.e. Austin Eckler, i.e. Derrick Henry, i.e. Joe Mixon,
and most of them were on the tag making that. They weren't.
A lot of those teams have that buyer's remorse, and I don't think they're going to be like, oh, we overpaid at running back before, let's go and make the same mistake again. And Howie Roseman could be sitting at the back of his perch saying, all right, I'm going to strike when everybody else is getting the heck out of Dodge, right? One man's trash is another man's treasure. That's disrespectful to say that to a lot of those guys, but just from my economic understanding of how the NFL has worked and the way that running back has been trending and the way that Howie Roseman is always the literal Charlie Day wildcard gift from Always Sunny, it could be a legitimate conversation to have. And then the biggest pitch you can say is, all right, Saquon, I know you want to be paid like the best guy, but all right, who's going to pay you? Is it going to be Vegas? You want to go to Vegas and have them win 0 games? Or do you want to come run behind Lane Johnson, Jordan Mailata, that's your selling pitch.
And Gino, what's the money difference anyway? Even if Vegas is going to pay you more, it's not like they're going to give you $15 million more than Philly.
Exactly. If it's a $2-3 million difference, if I'm Saquon Barkley, I say, okay, put all the incentives in the world in that contract and let me hit them.
There's not a single team right now that's willing to overpay a running back where the gap would be so substantial where a running back doesn't choose the better team.
And I think you can make that pitch to all of those guys, in my opinion, Lou. I mean,
I would. Josh Jacobs would be my favorite option in this discussion.
Dude, yes, Josh Jacobs. You came from a Vegas line, which last year it was better than years past, but man, we wanted you a couple of years ago. We did our homework. Howie Roseman has always been that guy that kind of wants to right the wrongs of missing out on that draft class. And who knows, dude, that could really be one of those things where you say, all right, Moneyball approach. We still haven't extended Devontae Smith yet. We still have 1 more year of him on that rookie deal. Maybe we capitalize on this where Jalen Hurts, what's his cap hit next year? $13 million. We're already sitting at around 41, even before the Avonte news, even before some of these extensions and restructures that I'm sure are bound to happen. Maybe Saquon is a smart guy and he says, let's go win some freaking football games. I would. If I'm at that point and you know the longevity of running backs in this league, Lou, why would you take the Le'Veon Bell approach and go play for the Jets? I wouldn't. Why would you in this day and age? You go and play for the teams that are going to go succeed, especially at running back where you could be out of the league by 28 years old.
It's going to be interesting to see what happens next week. It's all going to unfold. The running back market especially. There's a lot of good names, but like you said, it's just not everyone can get paid. Most of them don't. So maybe that's the way Howie Roseman tries to stay ahead of the curve. We'll get into it. We continue to cover all of free agency right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast. One more show for you this week, and then the tampering window opens. We thank you so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. For Gino Camilleri, I'm Lou DiBiase signing off as always. Thank you for downloading. Thank you for watching and listening, and let's go Birds.
Fly, Eagles, fly.